It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
The Seattle Sounders beat Toronto F.C. 3-1 to win their second title in 4 years, winning the MLS Cup this past weekend. And we have someone that was in Seattle watching it all go down. So joining us on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington this week, we've got Alexis Guerreros. He is the host of Soccer Cooligans and HQ Trivia. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Renee.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I am thrilled to hear everything that you got to see behind the scenes. Watching the game on TV is one thing, but talk to us about being there in Seattle with a record crowd of nearly 70,000 fans in attendance and just the way the atmosphere was rocking as Seattle won the title.
Yeah, I think, we've been doing a soccer show for 4 years, and the reason we did it is because we love soccer, and we wanted to grow in America. And it's like every time, last year in Atlanta was 74,000 fans. This year was the most expensive ticket in the secondary market, an average of over $600 for a ticket for a soccer game in the U.S. Every time Seattle scored, it actually registered on the seismograph in Seattle. Mini earthquakes, and we felt it in the stadium, especially in the press box, adjusting us to some of the more raucous fans. It's just one of those moments where, as a fan of the sport of soccer, it's like, wow, like we're not even trying to make it. It's happening in front of us. The sport is making it in America, and it's just when you see just the march to the match, which is. I think somewhere close to 15,000 people all marching, chanting the same thing in a direct straight line, the smoke bombs and the flares going off and all that. I don't know how you see that and not want to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this year, they had the playoff format for the MLS was different with single game eliminations. So we saw the excitement and intensity around the games amped up a lot. The crowds that have been at each game were increasing. You talk about ticket sales going up. The growth of the game, the fact that the fan quakes were recording as earthquakes because of how strong and how powerful it was that the fans were cheering in an uproar. The growth of the game, as you touch on, is just incredible to watch. Do you have a favorite moment from the MLS Cup final?
I would say my favorite moment from the MLS Cup final is the first goal because Kevin Leerdam goes down the right wing and he sends what everyone in the world, including obviously the goalkeeper, assumes is a cross, like across the face of the goal. And it takes a slight deflection off one of the defender's knees, and it goes in, and nobody moves. And that moment of hesitation for everyone in that stadium, whether you were a Toronto fan, which they had a little over 1,000 in the away section, or if you're one of the 68,000, or 69,000 Seattle fans, or any of the reporters that were near us, no one for that split second, you realize in that moment, like, oh no, it's happening. And Seattle and Toronto had met in an MLS Cup final 2 out of the last 3 previous seasons, and both of those were very slow, hard-fought, go-to-penalty kind of matches. So for this, all of a sudden, you knew it was going to get turned on. Everything changed once a goal is scored, and everyone becomes a little less defensive. That's the moment where I feel like the game opened up after that. And when you watch, whenever you watch a final, whether it's the Champions League final or whatnot, there's a lot of emotion that goes into it, but both teams tend to come out a little bit defensive, and it's not always the best match to watch. It seems like the ones leading up to it are a little bit more exciting. So that's the moment where I was like, here we go. Everyone who showed up is about to get a real game, and it was a heck of a one after that.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it is when you get that first goal in a soccer game, it's like for the team that scores, of course, just takes so much weight off your shoulders. Like, you know what? Here we are. We're in a big game. We got the first goal. We drew first blood. And then you can, sigh, a slight sigh of relief. Of course, it's not over yet, but then build some confidence. Now you can get numbers forward. Now you can play with, attack more. And the Sounders did have a tough first half in terms of maintaining possession, and then their second half was tremendously better. And that's something that I know following the game, a lot of the commentary I've been seeing is that they don't care what the critics have to say. They don't care if on paper, possession, and all the other stats were not in their favor. They know they got another star, and that's all that matters to them. And that's exactly all it comes down to.
Yeah, it's, you know, the Sounders are kind of a weird team because they're clearly a very good team. Both them and Toronto, no one would have picked to get to the final. And the Sounders, you know, they say like soccer is a lot like a lot of other sports. The team tends to mimic the manager. And you know, Schmetzer, for all the things you could say about him being an incredible leader and someone who certainly inspires the team to play a lot harder than you would assume they would on paper, the guy kind of comes across as kind of like, you know, he looks like an accountant. He looks like the stepdad you hope, you know, your mom dumps, you know? Like he's just kind of like, he kind of has like a bit of a guy who, you know, giggles at, you know, spreadsheets. You know, he doesn't really have a lot of pizzazz, you know, to him. But that, I think that's just the energy he puts out. Like, you know, when you see him and you sort of see how the team plays, you start to realize, like, now there's more to it. And as soon as the goal was scored, he would start kind of nodding his head like, yep, like it was going to his plan. It's one of those, it's a club you didn't expect to get this far, but it was going all to their plan. We were the only ones who didn't see it coming. They certainly did.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what a time to be in Seattle. I mean, we know that with Seattle winning over Toronto FC, they get another title under their belt. In football, the Seahawks are playing tremendous. I saw your post about someone selling hats with the 2019 MLS World Cup champions on the front. I mean, it just seems like you talk about the excitement and everything, the belief beyond it. And for whatever reason, critics may not have believed it. Seattle believed it. Their fans believed it. And they got the job done. So
even the bootleggers believed it. Like, and this is the thing. Like, you know, we talk about like I'm born and raised in Newark. Like when the hood starts believing in you, you're making it. You know what I mean? You know, I was like, hey, you know what? You know, we'll know that lacrosse made it when there's, you know, a crackhead selling lacrosse bootleg outside of the stadium. Like we did it. You know what I mean? Like when the street starts to believe in you, we're making it. Like American soccer is actually making it.
Yes. Finally. And this has been something that's been always in the conversation about what is it going to take for the MLS and on the women's side for the NWSL to turn that corner and have American fans just as excited as we have international fans are about the Premier League and other leagues. And finally, it seems like we are getting there. So yeah. This is you know, the end of a tremendous season. Take me through or talk me through your thoughts on how much this postseason change of the format. Now that we've seen it all play out, now that we have someone that, you know, won it all with Seattle, how much do you think that the postseason change really impacted the MLS and propelled them in the right direction, or maybe not at all?
I think it did. I think last season it was a home and away for each round. And what you saw was kind of what I said before, is every team came out very defensively in the beginning. Nobody wanted to give up the away goals, because scoring a goal while you're the road team, if you will, for anyone listening that's not a big soccer fan, or what you would call the away team, that counts. That's a tiebreaker. So if you guys draw even after the two games, home and away, they add up both scores. If you're still drawing even, then they count who scored more goals while they were the road team. So that, you know, what you tend to do, especially as a home team, you play super defensively, and you know, it's like boxers that just kind of lightly throw jabs, waiting to find an opening. And sometimes you don't find that opening, and what you find is that a lot of the first-round games are very boring. And you know, people complain because most soccer leagues don't have playoffs, and people complain that the American League has a playoff. But for the most part, that's always sort of the ratings bonanza for MLS. So as a business, you understand why they have it. And with sort of the dragging down of the games that we saw last season, there was a big push for them to make it a single game elimination. And there's also that international break where the national teams play. So there was like this 2-week gap last season. So not only were the games kind of boring, but then all of a sudden there's like a 2-week to 3-week gap where there are no games, and players are going to play for their nations. And you know, it's taking too much away from this ratings bonanza and really from the fever pitch end of the season. So this year they compressed the season heavily so that they can do a single game elimination and finish the season before the international break, which they did. They finished it in mid-November. There's such a level of anticipation. There's such a game after game after game. It felt like it never ended, the playoffs. And every game was super intense. And I think that is proven to a lot of people to be sort of a winning formula. And it's something that the commissioner himself said he was going to keep going next season and probably moving forward. And again, that might only change with people complaining because, again, Toronto and Seattle were not the ones anyone picked. Everyone was hoping, including the league, that it was LA versus Atlanta, the two biggest teams in the league. But when you have this much excitement, it almost doesn't matter. That said, ratings were a little bit lower for the finals. A lot of things could be point to that time of the year, maybe. Who knows exactly why? Maybe it is the two teams with smaller markets. But I think you're going to see more and more focus be put on the single game elimination and sort of this fever pitch to the final as what we saw this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The intensity was drastically higher. You know, the emotions, each game had a feel like it was a final because it was single game elimination. It was win or go home. And I do know a lot of conversations I had with people, just everyone had the same predictions, LA versus Atlanta in the final. But I think that's almost what made it just even more, gratifying to watch, is these are two teams that were quote-unquote underdogs, even though, as you mentioned, for Seattle, they definitely at no point thought of themselves as underdogs. But from the outside perspective, a lot of fans, a lot of people just kind of looked at, okay, who was the best teams last year? Who were the best teams in the regular season? They're probably going to make the final. And
I also don't believe that. I think Seattle and Toronto were like, oh my God, what do we do now? We actually made it. Nobody believed in them. I don't even think they believed in them. I think most of their girlfriends and wives had to cancel vacations for the playoffs. They're like, are you still playing? I think
we weren't expecting this.
Yeah, I think most of the stadiums were like, I guess you got to stay in the concessions to a lot of the employees. No one thought these teams were going to be there. I mean, it goes to show there weren't that many events around the actual game. I think it was a real sort of last-minute thing to think of what do we do in Seattle.
Yeah. Well, we know Seattle had their parade on Tuesday. We know Victor Rodriguez was named the 2019 MLS Cup MVP. So looking back over the course of the playoffs, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Who are some of your players that you would look at as top performers in the playoffs that maybe even caught you by surprise or just maybe performed at a level higher than you anticipated going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I would say the first name is Pozuelo, who's the sort of the creative midfielder for Toronto. It's the third most expensive player in the league history, and I know that's shocking for me to say that he was surprising. But, he's not a player that has ever really played in a playoff format. And for him to do what he did to help get Toronto to the final, I even said in the final it's going to be Nico Lodero, which is his counterpart in Seattle versus him, because the two midfield fulcrums are so important for both of those teams to sort of shuttle the game out of defending into the forward. I think how he proved that he could step up in a big game just goes to show that he's one of the most important players in the league. He's not the guy who's going to put butts in the seats, unfortunately, because he's not a big name. The number two player who I would pick is Carlos Vela. LAFC had never beaten LA Galaxy. And to beat him in the biggest possible game, now that emotional letdown, that emotional how much emotion is exhausted to beat LA Galaxy might have been the reason they lost to Seattle in the next match. But just putting all their eggs in one basket, going all in to say, all right, we've never beaten LA Galaxy before, but we don't care if Zlatan Ibrahimovic is on there. We're going to do it. There you go. They actually did it. And we got to be at that match as well, which was intense. So, proud of both of those guys, Pozuelo and Vela. Two big names, but they've shown that, big games, they'll find a way to make it happen.
And that's the thing. When it comes down to the postseason and, the season is on the line, the big name players find a way to elevate their game to lead their team, like Carlos Vela, like they did. That's exactly it. So I could not agree more. All right, well, Alexis, where can our listeners follow you on social media to keep up with your soccer coverage?
Well, I do talk about it a lot on my personal account, which is at NotAlexis, NOTALEXIS, but everything that involves soccer is at Soccer Cooligans, COOLIGANS, and we're also a television show now on the Fubo Network, Fubo Sports Network, I should say. So at Fubo Sports, follow them on YouTube as well if you want to see all of our episodes, if you don't have an account to Fubo Sports. But if you go to FuboSportsNetwork.com, it's actually still for free right now. You can watch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m.
There you go. Well, congrats on getting your show onto Fubo TV. I did see that. That's awesome. And I am curious why you are not Alexis. Is it because you're such a celebrity that you're like,
yeah, trust me, it's not
Alexis?
Me. No, I think when I first started Twitter, everybody was going with it or I am, and I just wanted to be a contrarian. So I went with not Alexis. And then I recently got verified on Twitter, but I spoke to somebody at Twitter who told me that the first few times that I had been considered and denied was because it was at not Alexis. So, it kind of worked against my favor for a little bit. But yeah, at not Alexis and at Soccer Cooligans.
You're a trendsetter, and you found a way to still get verified, even though it's not at not Alexis.
Like my mother has always complained, I do things the way I want, and somehow it still works out.
Hey, yeah, you go to the beat of your own drum. I like that. But thank you so much for joining the show and weighing in on the experience being in Seattle for the MLS Cup final and your thoughts on the entire playoff. So it was an exciting one to watch, and I'm glad to have had you on the show to break it down.
Thanks for having me on. This was awesome.